I once worked with a C-suite leader who walked into a quarterly team meeting and completely ripped up everything the team had been working on for months. Not good enough. We need more. This wasn't where it should be. You could feel the tension in the room immediately. The team walked out flat, deflated, and thinking, what is the point? But what became clear later was it wasn't really about the team. The leader was under enormous pressure from the CEO to deliver results and products. And without realizing it, frustration had quietly taken over. Emotions started leading. Welcome back to the Cognitive Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Clint Ray, high performance coach, speaker, and author of The Cognitive Athlete. Last week, we talked about performance anchors, the standards that hold when the plan falls apart. This week, we're talking about emotions, not about removing them, not about suppressing them, about recognizing when they start driving your behavior because it costs you. Here's what I've noticed over many years of coaching leaders. Pressure changes people. Not permanently, but behavior shifts. Patience shortens, urgency increases. As a result, your listening drops. And the scary part, most people don't even realize it's happening. Let's dive into it. Going back to that C-suite leader for a moment, the interesting thing wasn't just the meeting, it was what happened afterwards. His micromanagement increased, patience decreased, meetings became a lot shorter, conversations became more directive, and pressure then started flowing downhill. It was the same person, but just in a different state. And I've seen this happen many times with good leaders, experienced leaders, and capable leaders. When pressure goes up, behavior changes. And it's not an intentional thing. It gradually happens quietly in the background. One of the patterns I've noticed is that under pressure, we tend to go down and inward instead of up and out. You're probably thinking, what does down and inward look like? Well, it looks like controlling more and delegating less, listening less and talking more, particularly in meetings, becoming impatient with people and processes, narrowing thinking just to short-term fixes, and maybe becoming defensive when challenged. On the other hand, up and out looks a bit like staying curious about what is actually happening, taking a perspective before reacting, coaching and collaborating instead of directing, asking better questions, and finally, seeking input from people around you. The challenge is that pressure naturally pulls us downwards, which is exactly why awareness matters so much. One of the things I often coach leaders on is recognizing their red flags, the early warning signals that pressure is starting to affect their behavior. Before that poorly worded email, before that rushed decision, before the conversation that should have gone differently. For some people, the red flags are obvious. They talk faster, they interrupt more, become impatient, and then they rush to fix things before they fully understand the situation. For others, it's a little bit more subtle. They withdraw, they go quiet in meetings, stop asking questions, and could become overly critical of people around them. The key is this: your red flags are signals, not flaws. They're the early warning system. And the sooner you learn to recognize them, the sooner you can make an adjustment before the damage is done. For me, one of my biggest red flags is pace. When pressure increases, I naturally want to move faster. I talk faster, I do more, and I pack more into my day. And if I'm not careful, that urgency starts driving my decisions. I've been guilty of it. I've sent an email I immediately wished I could recall. I've rushed conversations that needed more time, and I've made decisions late on a Friday that looked very differently on a Monday morning. So now, when I notice that pace, climbing, that's the usual cue for me. That's my red flag. To slow down, to pause, and to get some perspective. Speed and effectiveness are not the same thing. Here's the cognitive athlete perspective. Cognitive athletes understand something really important. Emotions are useful. They carry information. Information like frustration might be telling you something actually matters. Stress might be signaling that capacity is stretched too thin. Anxiety might be pointing to something that genuinely needs attention. But emotions are data, not instructions. The moment emotions start making the decisions, performance usually suffers, and the people around you feel it before you do. Okay, let's turn all of this theory into actions. This week is about awareness, not perfection, definitely not suppressing your emotions, but awareness. Because awareness always comes before adjustment. Here's action number 1. I want you to identify your red flags. What changes first when pressure increases for you? Maybe it's pace, could be patience, maybe your tone, energy, or the biggest one, the language that you use. Write them down, just 2 or 3, because you can't catch something you haven't named yet. Action number 2. Notice when you go down and inward. This week, at least once a day, ask yourself this question. Am I going down and in or up and out? It sounds very simple, but it's one of the most powerful pattern interrupters I use with leaders. The question creates a gap between the trigger and the response, and that gap is where choice lives. Action number 3. Name the emotion before you act. Before making an important decision or having that difficult conversation this week, pause and ask yourself, what emotion is driving me right now? Is it frustration, stress, urgency? Maybe it's fear. You don't have to remove it. The key is just to notice it. Because awareness creates choice, and choice creates control. And here's an important rule for this week. Don't let temporary emotions make permanent decisions. Okay, let's bring this together. Pressure changes behavior, often before we even notice it's happening. The goal isn't to become emotionless. The goal is to recognize your emotional drift early enough to make a different choice. Because that's the difference between reacting and responding, between emotion driving performance and performance driving emotion. Next week, we're talking about standards, why they slip under pressure, and how high performers hold the line when things get hard. We'll unpack that next week. And before we wrap up, if this season is resonating with you and you're ready to improve how you perform under pressure, I'm opening the next 10-week cognitive training cycle starting on the 27th of July. Over those 10 weeks, we'll work on focus, decision quality, energy, routines, recovery, and performance habits that actually stick. I've got 10 places available, and if you'd like to work with me directly, then head to the link in the show notes and book a call. High performance isn't accidental, it's trained. If this episode's resonated with you, hit follow or subscribe. It generally helps grow the podcast and get it in front of those people that need it the most. And if someone comes to mind while listening, share it with them. Pressure doesn't create character, it reveals it. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.